As always, we're so appreciative of your presence at our presentations, your contributions. It's always our pleasure and honor to talk with you guys and work with you guys. And we put a lot of effort into these and all of our materials, and so it's really nice that some people are able to enjoy them and use them and hopefully help build your practices. So we appreciate you guys more than you know. And as always, like invite friends, invite your staff, have them join. I'd even give them like a candy bar if you got them to attend one of these classes so they could learn. It's always double the work for you to learn it and then take it back to them. So if they get to come, then that's nice. We're going to be talking about an interesting subject. And if you came to, a couple of you were there last week when I was talking about sales and getting patients to say yes from your treatment plans. And so today I'm calling this the Golden Consult. I've called it that before, or part of our VIP experience series. And I have. It's been a few years since I've given a lot of these presentations. And so I kind of went back through some old ones, pulled out some things, added some new things, changed some graphics. And I told you last week that I really have felt, and with the help of everybody I work with, felt really inclined to approach this subject again. It's never the most popular conversation in medicine, but that's possibly a direct reflection in the fact that so many practices are struggling with this or struggling to see their potential, struggling to have their staff really produce for them, right? You can hire people to just do busy work, but you really want to make them producible. So as I was preparing this, there's so many things I want to put in it, so many things I want to talk about. It's so involved. There's so many little things that you could tweak and improve on. And I've landed on what we're going to go through today, and hopefully that lands on you guys well. Hopefully you can get some nuggets out of this. Again, hopefully you've even got maybe some of your staff here, and that's everybody. This is everybody from your front desk to your back end to your associate docs. It's just everybody can improve in this area of how to give or how to interact or how to present information in your consultations. And that's what I mean by the golden consult is if you could maximize and make that piece of your practice efficient and effective, then everything else around you improves. And the number one thing that improves is your patient outcomes. So I want to focus, I want to make sure that that is out in front here, that all of these things are to improve patient outcomes. And I've seen that. So, Vicky, are we recording? Are we good on that? And number two, I want to start a little bit with my backstory. Some of you may know it, some of you may not, but I've been doing this um, going on 16 years. And when I first started, I had very little experience, except that I had been a patient, not me, but my daughter, and my son for that matter. And actually, at this point, I'd broken my tailbone and I had learned about prolozone, a practitioner who was doing prolozone. And I walked in to get some prolozone. And he was doing IV therapy and he was doing neural therapy and he was doing all this cool stuff. And I was in heaven. And so I begged him for a job. I worked for free in order to get that job. And I just wanted to learn and I just wanted to help him help other people. I just instantly felt an absolute connection to the medicine and felt like this is really powerful. Even that long ago, which isn't that long ago, but it is. Healthcare is changing so much and so fast. And in other ways, it's completely stagnant. But I felt so connected to helping more people realize their healthcare options. And I really still feel like that is my biggest driver day to day. But at the time, as a patient, it was painful almost to be in that practice as a patient. It was so cool to see what was going on. The doctor was phenomenal. I really connected with him. The staff was so-so. It took forever. Your average visit in the office was 3 to 6 hours. If you were there for an IV, that might sound okay, but 6 hours for one IV. And if you were waiting for some injections, maybe 2 to 3 hours. And it was just because it was cool stuff. They had brought a lot of stuff in. There were 17 employees, including 4 doctors, and they were doing 1.2 million a year. It was a fourth generation practice that had really evolved from chiropractic and naturopathic into IV and injections, and we had RNs and even a nurse practitioner at the time. And every time I went, I loved it and I hated it. I had to plan the whole day, didn't know what I was going to get, didn't know what it was going to cost me when I checked out. And half the time, by the time he came in with his needles, I was like, now what again are we doing? Like, you've talked about a lot of things. I like a lot of things that you've said, but what again are you doing? And I never at that point wanted to slow down the process and say, and by the way, what is this going to cost me? And at the time, I was definitely very budget conscious. So I begged for a job though, and as I spent time in there just a few months, I was like just blown away again further with how cool the medicine was, but also even more disappointed with the backside of things. So I made some suggestions and we let go of and completely transitioned to one doctor. One of them was his dad, and he passed away in that time. So we went down to one doctor, one practitioner, and 4 staff, and I was one of them. So we downsized, and yet those 4 people became, plus doctor, became as efficient as all 17 were before. And in 2 years' time, from start to finish, we went from 1.2 million to 3.4. And I'll say this too. When I first started 1.2 million, he was taking home $80,000 a year and his overhead was 95%. And when we went over to 3.4 million, he was taking home a lot more, 10x that. And his overhead still was too high, but at 55%. And those are numbers I hope you understand and think about, but it's my background, and that is where I'm coming from when I give these presentations. Just the consult alone, when we changed that, it changed everything. And then there's so much that you can stack and build on that that can also help change. But as part of this conversation, it is being efficient with conversation, being efficient with communication, actually connecting with patients. And so I do want to also talk about some of the statistics there that will help justify where I came from, and actually show that that medicine is discovering that there's a lot to be desired in the consult, and there's now research to show that, and there's also now an influx um, of programs in medical school to help nullify this and make it better. So I'm going to share a lot of stuff here. I feel like it's going to be a lot, and yet I want to continue this conversation beyond tonight with any of you who would like to engage in that with me and like to make your practices much more efficient and profitable, make your patients more happy, give them that VIP experience, and ultimately, you can make money from this. Holly and I, who you've met, one of our customer service representatives and client liaisons, she's been sitting in with me in consults, and we have had so many lately where people are like, I just want to do the medicine. I don't expect to make money. And that makes me sad because you can't stay in business if you don't make money. You can't maintain your lifestyle, maintain your health if you can't have some freedom. And you can do both. I promise you that you can do both. And the people in your office can make money for you too. They can be producers also. And that's also what this is about. So, yes, use the chat. We would love to hear your conversations, to hear your thoughts on this, to hear what your concerns are. Where do you think these gaps are in your practice? I assume if you're here, I'm really proud of you actually, because again, this isn't the most popular conversation. I think if you're here, you recognize that you could be better and you recognize that you might have some of these gaps. And I think that puts you at the top. I really do. Because it's much more likely that medical practitioners are so much more interested in medicine. They're interested in science. They're interested in helping people, but they're also in MedMasters. We do focus on training. We want to teach you guys and teach your staff how to be competent and comfortable in doing specific procedures. We want to give you the materials to help with your what's the word? Like the legality part of things, your implementation part, your SOPs, right? We've been focused a lot on that in 2024. But again, as it's been brought to our attention, it's like you can have all that. And then the next question is always, how do I market and sell this? Market is usually the word they use because nobody wants to use sales in medicine. But then we start to hear we're not doing as well with this as we thought we would. We also hear the opposite. Some people are just killing it. But we also hear that a lot too. So again, as a team, we've come together and said, how can we help you the most? I think we can start with this conversation on treatment plans, consults, and so on. So I do want to share my slides. If you're just listening with us, then we are recording this. You can watch this at any time. And I like the slides because number one, they help me keep my thoughts together. And number two, they give you visual ways to learn, right? So if you're just listening, then you can have access to this. I hope we get it out tomorrow because you're going to want to listen to the end. We do have workshops coming. We do have ways to bring your entire staff into this and get them completely inundated in this psychology of having these conversations. So, what was I doing? Sharing. Okay. So I've called it the Golden Consult. You guys now know me a little bit. If you're new to this, I am one of the co-founders of MedMasters. We're so excited you're here. Thank you so much. And as a team, again, we appreciate the work that you do and that you're here for this conversation and how this will help you grow your practice and help you make money. And again, I said it if you missed it before, all of this comes down to letting people know what their healthcare options are and therefore getting good outcomes with that, right? If you dabble in something, if you don't implement something properly, you're not going to get the outcome you expect. And then after that, you can make money with this. So my goal is to first show you some of the conversation deficit in healthcare based on the studies and literature. Number two, break down an ideal consult for best results. At some of that I'm going to skip over. I want to focus on a couple of other things, but that's where coming soon we're going to have these workshops and classes that I'll tell you about in the end. And then third, focus on tips for selling treatments as a result of your consult. So here's what we hear all the time. We hear this all the time, day in and day out. I am always preaching. I do a lot of private coaching for building treatment plans, and I'm gonna turn that into a group setting and even an automated thing, and so we'll have access to that at a lower rate, and I can be more productive. But we help people build treatment plans day in and day out, and yet then I hear all the time patients can't afford the treatment or the treatment plans. Heard that yesterday. Great office. They really have the best intentions. They live in an area that's really low income. So that's part of it. But we hear this all the time. Patients can't afford this, or you're worried that they can't afford it. Second, if I say we're going to do all this for this price, then patients can't commit to your fear is that patients won't or can't commit to the treatment plan. And that treatment plan is what you're presenting in the consult. So that's how they tie together. But here's the thing, secretly, you're just insecure or timid or worried because of your own impressions, but you're just afraid to ask for time and money. And you don't have to admit it. You don't, this is not a confession booth, but I just know that that's the case. And I totally understand it. I'm in business too. Asking for money for your services is often hard. You're dealing with often sick people or people who may not have, what you think are the means. But these are really the top concerns that come. Again, you have your credentials, your staff does, you learn a new therapy, you get educated, you learn how to complete that treatment, right? Do the ozone IV or do those injections. And now, how do you pull it all together, present it to somebody, and then get them to say yes? So I want to focus on this. We say this slide all the time. Our motto is protect the patient, protect the provider, and protect the medicine. But in medicine, right, number one rule is do no harm. Number two, though, is safety and efficacy. If we really believe this, then we have to do better at the conversation because the conversation and the consultations and outside the consultation, anywhere in your office, any touch point in your office is going to lead to efficacy or not. And the gap in there, the middle piece in there is compliance. If your patients don't comply, with any treatment plan, etc., then it can't be effective. So again, you guys hear me say this all the time. I think that the worst thing you can do is not give your best opinion, not give your treatment plan, and lead a patient down a road that won't get the outcome that you hope for and that you expect. So I want to start with this or lead with this. This is one of my favorite quotes. Health isn't everything, but without health, everything is nothing. I say this to patients day in and day out. I honestly believe this. I know you guys have seen this. It only becomes important when you start to lose things, right? But the value there is that you are worth it because if you can't function, if you can't live the way you want, then what is the rest of it for? And it is a reminder at the value of health. There will always be value in health because without it, life isn't worth living and it's very painful. So, one of the first things to consider here is who are you talking to? Who are your patients? What is their mindset? How do you identify them? And so one of them, they could be looking for someone who's compassionate, who will listen and won't do the same thing that's already been done. That might be unsatisfied with current options, looking for viable alternatives. They might have exhausted all their known options, frustrated emotionally and financially. I know you guys see that a lot, especially in chronic disease. Maybe they're actually educated and empowered by maybe well-known public advocates. We've got that like never before, right? Social media, websites, podcasts, all this stuff, but they don't know where to find the person in their area, the person that they could go to and trust. That happens all the time. That was actually me. I was pretty well educated when I came into this with my daughter, and I just needed to find somebody. So when I walked in those doors, I was like, this is a place. This is it. Found my home. And there's also those who tried it, maybe they're educated, empowered, sick, whatever, and they got into it, but they didn't have a good experience with it. I'm sure you guys have seen that too, especially as um, as competition has grown, right? As the IV franchises have become more prevalent and so on and so forth. Plus, this industry in general is growing like crazy. And I think you always need to remember that. If you don't have this conversation with people, if you don't engage and get those outcomes, chances are they'll go somewhere else and they'll find it. And they'll probably pay those guys what that you were afraid to ask them for. So remember who you're talking to and remember what their pain points are. Remember the different stages that they might be in. And that's really important. Now, next, I think, is to have a mindset to be extraordinary. So in medicine, and especially in conventional allopathic medicine, there's kind of a bare minimum standard. And that could be in the experience. It also could be in the medicine itself. So we have an opportunity, a huge opportunity. I think we have an obligation to do better than that. And third to that is when people pay cash, they actually expect more. Insurance-based models don't people, you have to just live with it, right? You get what you get. It's frustrating. I dealt with it personally even this morning. It's so frustrating. And so people expect something different. They love to feel something different, and you have a huge opportunity to do that. Now, what does that look like? Our industry is already right cash pay. It's already doing things that the conventional is not. There's already room for skepticism or at least fear in what we do, and so we can't let that perpetuate in our offices. You have to be extraordinary. So what's expected? I mean, this is like, oh, everybody wears gloves, everybody schedules appointment, everybody takes, 2 hours for an hour-long appointment. Nobody puts clocks on the walls. Everybody, has their front desk person and their nurse that comes in and talks to you, and every patient feels like the nurse never tells the doctor and the patient has to tell them all over again, right? This is just base. This is what's expected. If your office runs like that, then it's going to be a lot tougher to get referrals, to get asking for cash. Your services alone will help with that, but you have to be better than that because people won't pay out of pocket for just the base. Now, then there's the middle, like the augmented area where maybe you've up leveled that a little bit, and so has allopathic medicine. You might get a text, a reminder that says your appointment's coming. The pharmacies will now call and say it's time to renew your prescriptions, like some of this automation and even AI is coming into this. And, outside of that, in terms of cash stuff like orthodontics or cosmetic stuff, that stuff is a whole different thing. And they've really personalized that. But that augmented space is like, hey, maybe you took a few steps up. Now, the potential in the outer, or sorry, the inner side, right? Is to be that outside the box thinking, right? How to create the perfect patient experience and make that happen. So what can you do to be extraordinary? And it's in everything. It's in the people you hire, it's the way your office looks, it's the conversations you have, it's your social media, your website, it's how they get treated after they leave your office. It's all these things. So the extraordinary is the basic standard and a lot more. And that actually translates to competence. Like we want competence in medicine, but we want that plus communication and even hope. And that equals extraordinary. So it's interesting because communication is the foundation of all this. It's again, it's you got the competency and then you got to add good communication. But really, if you can connect, because we can all talk to each other. That doesn't mean we're connecting. That doesn't mean we're understanding each other. So the missing link is actually connection. But think about the definitions this way. To communicate is just to impart knowledge. If you connect, you actually establish communication. You actually establish that you understand each other. So you actually join or link or fasten together or unite. That is the definition there. To establish, going back to that word, it's to cause to be accepted or recognized, to show value or true, what's true. So with these definitions, you kind of see how we need all three. And I'm going to share lots of statistics with that. Here they come. I love stats. I know you guys love stats. And again, this isn't just my opinion and my experience. Like there is now information that shows this. So did you know that 85% of your success has nothing to do with your clinical application? Again, I am not diminishing by any means your education, your experience, your CEs, your continuing education in terms of all the things that you now do in the beyond your original education scope of practice. However, there's so much more to this. So here's the typical reasons people leave their doctor. 1% of them die. 3% of them move. 5% of them, they change insurance. If you're an insurance model, and this is all of medicine. 9%, maybe they move location. Which 3% move, sorry, 9% you change location. You might lose some patients that way. 14%, they just don't resonate with you, just don't care for you, your office, whatever. And that's a scary thought too. But 68% of patients leave a practice of all types because of an attitude of indifference from a medical office. So, what does an attitude of indifference even mean? And why does all this matter? Because you could have all the greatest, I see this all the time. This was even my first location. I was like, you're such a great doctor. You have all these skills and you are actually really likable. And you have like 4 generations behind you to support this. Why is it so painful to be in your office in so many ways? So you can have all these things. I know a lot of people and listening will feel that way is I'm not reaching my full potential. Why? And it's interesting, 68% an attitude of indifference, which means that they feel that you don't care whether they're there or not. Your office does not demonstrate that you really want them as patients and or you are upset if they left. They feel like you wouldn't even notice. That's what attitude of indifference is. So here's some more statistics. An indifferent patient is neither loyal or disloyal, like I just said. They don't have a problem looking for other options and they spend only the minimum on your services. Maybe they come in once, maybe they try a couple IVs. It's not really their thing. They didn't notice anything. Maybe there's a million other reasons why they didn't like your office. And so they're okay going somewhere else. Now, 13%, sorry, you get a decrease in spending with anybody who's disengaged, right? These are the people upset that you actually offended them. They really didn't like anything. Maybe they were poked 15 times. Maybe you took, 3 months longer than you said to get back with them. Maybe every time they call, they can't get through. Maybe every time they call, nobody can tell them what they need. Like there's all these reasons, right? And so they're disengaged. They're not loyal, and they might even be spreading bad word of mouth about you. And for every one person that you hear or see in that condition, studies show there's at least 10 more that feel like them. So it's not something to always change your whole system around, but it is something to pay attention to and see if you can improve. Because we know that sometimes there's just a bad egg and nobody's ever going to make them happy. But when people do take the time to even if it's out of anger or disappointment, to let you know Oftentimes that's telling you they actually do care. They actually see potential in you. They actually want to let you know, and they're probably offended too. But listen to that. But those you're going to see a decrease, right? They don't spend with you at all. In fact, a negative 13% because they might actually prohibit other people from trying you out. That's where the negative comes from. Then you've got the engaged. The engaged patients are happy with your practice and they have seen results. They spend more, 23% more if they're actually happy and a little loyal. So that means they continue to stay with you for all the right reasons. You know, they like you, they come back to you when they know that they need something you have. Now, the really brand aligned, and that has a whole lot of connotation to it, but the really uber engaged, they think that you are their primary care provider. They will come to you for everything and anything. They believe that you have a good heart. They love being a patient in your office. Everybody's not just we like you, but it's efficient. Those people spend on average 47% more in their lifetime. And just think about what the referral situation does with that. That's where you need to get patients engaged. Now, this keeps going. Patients, in order to be engaged, they need to, well, there's lots of engagement studies, and they're often based in education. We'll keep going with this. So, education, which extends to both our staff and our patients. The more you educate your staff, the more they can be extensions of you. I always call it staphylococcus. Your staff is completely contagious, good or bad. And they are extensions of you. And if it's a bad reputation they're extending, then that reflects on you as providers if you're the provider. And if they're great, that also reflects on you. And they can also be extensions of your production. So education and knowledge empower all of us to action. It's the way we are as human beings. And that action improves our current situation to something better. And I always say this, when it comes to sales, all that means to me is we are emotionally engaging somebody in something that we feel, a service or product, that can help them. You don't need to shy away from that. If you actually believe that and you engage in that and it can improve their situation, then you shouldn't have a hard time charging for it. But when it comes to marketing, I believe it's really education. So an internal marketing system that focuses on teaching certain philosophies congruent with the way you practice and the services that you provide. And that actually helps them with what they could expect. So these statistics, again, we've tried so hard to quote everything, but 12% of adults are educated in the United States. Only 12% of adults are educated in healthcare enough to make effective decisions. 40 to 80% of information is immediately forgotten by the patients after the visit. Like, think about that. 40 to 80% of the time you spend talking to people is immediately forgotten. What do we do about that? Studies revealed that only 25% of Americans leave a doctor's visit on a positive note. They feel empowered. They feel happy. They had a good experience. They left on time, blah, 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 blah. And 75% on a negative note. How educated patients work for you. Again, empowering them through education is valuable to you, but you have to be effective in communicating that. Educated patients take responsibility for their health. They actually take a proactive role in their health. Cash pay, cash pay. They justify the cost. Cash pay. Follow through with treatments and instructions. When you pay hard-earned money, you're actually probably going to follow through more. And when you understand why and how to be compliant, you're more likely to be compliant. They have increased perception of you and your services, which changes their expectation, sometimes makes their expectation higher, but it also allows for some leniency and some grace. But it also, perception means they trust you more. They will come to you for more things. They'll refer people to you for more things. So that's really important. They expect higher quality, more communication, and better outcomes. So, what do we say? Put on your, big boy, big girl pants, right? Like, they are going to expect more out of you. And that's, I think, a great opportunity to live up to. It increases patients' trust in you for all these reasons, sets you up as a healthcare expert in their lives. The trust increases your credibility and strengthens their confidence in you. The more they know about the services you provide, the reasons you do it, the backstory and why you're here, the more that they connect with you, the more through education of all types, then the more they can work for you is kind of what we're going out here. Creates loyal patients, allows you to build a relationship of reciprocity with them, referrals, deepens their feelings of sincerity in your efforts. That's where they can give you grace. By the way, how do you say this? The number one sued doctor, the most sued doctor, is not the one that makes the most mistakes. It's the one that people don't like. And I think it needs to go hand in hand. It's not just the doctor either, it's the whole office. But think about that. You hone in on your education, your skills, you want to be good at what you do, but if you can't connect with people and deepen their feelings of sincerity in your efforts, that's where you run into those types of problems. And it does generate more revenue at the bottom line. All right, there's basically three components of the consultation, and there's a pre-consult whole thing that I do, and there's a post-consult, right? I always said look the part, be the part, act the part. Looking the part is before they get there. Then they get to your office, the consultation, and maybe services too. And then you have to be what you purported to be. And then when they leave, you have to act that part continually. This is a three-part series for sure, but within that consultation, it could be their new patient consultation, it could be any of the other types of consults you're having. I narrowed it into three things: credentials and knowledge. You got to have that, right? And then medical sales. I know you hate that word, but we're going to use it a lot, and treatment plans. And then actually you got to medical sales kind of ties all this together. I would say it comes back. So the pre-sale, I didn't want to spend much time on this because it's a whole thing, but there are things you can do to build their trust. There's a study. It says that women between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. find or research and discover their healthcare choices at home, online. So before they get to the office, it's really important. Everything you do is really important. I'll just say that. All right. Credentials and knowledge, right? You go to school, then they come in, you've got to get, their intake, their family history, medical, all these pieces of the puzzle that you do need to work to put together. And sometimes you're getting it from other, providers, their history, all sorts of stuff. And now you're going to move forward with what you know and what you do. So analysis, diagnosis, and those things often come into the consultation. That's fine, and that is great, and that is essential, and that is not enough. From there, though, we get further into the sales process. I'm going to give some interesting statistics here. So, contrary to what you might think or what many might think, the first reason for a consultation is to establish a relationship with your patient. It's to create trust. And this is the first thing patients are looking for. Do I resonate? Is there anything about this person that I don't like, that I do like, whatever, right? They need to connect with you at least on certain terms. This is shown in multiple studies such as those listed here. This top one specifically, does the physician, you see this here, does the physician's emotional intelligence matter? It indicates that a patient's trust is the cornerstone of the patient-physician relationship, quote unquote, and that this is directly influenced by the quality of the follow-up visits. Patients who want to see you demonstrate confidence, not necessarily in yourself, but in your findings, in your treatment recommendations, as well as hope for them as patients. This is going to follow up with some other statistics, because not everybody walks out of your office feeling hopeful. The consultation is ultimately about the patient. I think we kind of know that, but I think sometimes we feel like we need to prove ourselves, and we do. It's more about even what we might be going through in life. Like there's so many things that play into there, but if you can approach and get into every consultation room with, I'm focused on the patient, and even prepare to be focused on the patient, you're going to be more effective. The consults is actually where you connect with patients through effective communication. So you need to be able to communicate well, which I know you all think you do just by holding a consultation, right? We're sitting and we're talking, but there's more statistics. And then you need to learn the skill of converting them to a treatment plan. So I asked this question of all my consulting clients. Are you a consult clinic where you make your money, you hold a lot of consults, right? Are you just mostly a consultation office, or are you a treatment center? And you can be a little bit of both, but you have to really think about this. Some people want to charge thousands of dollars for their consultations. Some people don't want to charge anything. They want to get people in the door with that. But if you're not able to take that conversation and convert it into treatments, by default, you're only a consultation office. You can only really make money in the consultation. And you also are leaving a lot on the table for patients in terms of their treatments, right? So ask yourself that. But you need to be able to communicate well, which I know you think that you do, but you may not. We may not be as good as we think we are. I think this is a human thing. I've been studying so much communication, different ways to, like the love language, right? You got that. You got how we all react to confrontation. We got different personality types. We got triggers of our past, like so many things here. And I think learning how to be good communicators is such an important part of all of our relationships that if you invest in this, you will see so many of your relationships improve too. But then you need to learn the skill of converting them to a treatment plan. So a lot of people, a lot of practitioners are really good at here's your labs, here's your diagnosis, here's what I would do or medications you might be like, they're good at that. And maybe even like, how are you, Mrs. Smith? And how's your kids? And things like that. But if you don't then convert to a treatment plan, which is what they really want. Think about this, and this study talks about this. If you want to look it up and read it, it talks about this. Patients have come back and said, I wouldn't be in your office if I didn't want at least your recommendation for treatment moving forward. If you don't offer them that, you're withholding, and that's why some of them leave with less hope. And sometimes you present that treatment plan, but it's really convoluted. They're not understanding everything that you're saying. So patients want to be treated, but they need to trust you first. That's important. And fourth, we need to empower and inspire action. Those are the pieces that are in this study that, again, patients are saying are not well done. So don't underestimate what a valuable position opportunity the consult is. And considering the cash-based model, many of you probably find yourself in patient satisfaction is directly connected and affects your bottom line. So in that first office we were in, we always felt the new patient visit was really important, really, really important, right? And you got to get them into that first phase of treatment and get them started, whatever that is. But then the follow-up visit is even more important. That is where we sit down and analyze, did this work? How compliant are you? How did your body respond? So all consultations, I would say, are really the most important visit, but report of findings could be even more so than new patient. So here's another something interesting. This also comes from NIH, reviewing doctor-patient communication. 75% of practitioners feel they communicate well. This means providers walk out of the room like, yep, I nailed it, totally know what's going on, totally have the skills and the treatments and everything else to help these people. However, only 21% of your patients walk out of the room saying the same thing. They don't feel like they understand. They don't feel empowered. They don't feel like they were really educated on much. Here's something else. Studies show that a visit that lasted 20 minutes, less than 1 minute was spent giving patients any information at all. And I would say some of that's because we're shooting the breeze. We're trying to connect a little bit. That's worthy of mentioning. And a lot of integrative providers feel like they have to spend 1 hour into our consultations to get through it all too. We're doing extensive labs. We want to connect. We need all this time to explain things, and we can be so much more efficient than that too. But this study shows that sometimes physician-patient communication is so poor that half of patients leave not knowing what they've been told. And again, if they don't understand, then they're not compliant and they're never going to get well. And this is whether you're telling them to have a knee surgery, whether it's like take your lisinopril, like it doesn't matter if they don't comply. And conventional medicine puts some things in place, like pharmacies sending you texts and emails and calls if you need to refill your prescription. But it's more than that. 90% of patients highly value having as much information as possible from their physician. I do think, though, communication is huge with this. If you pontificate an enormous amount of medical jargon, that's when they don't understand. And I think a lot of practitioners actually don't develop the skill of translation. And also, you need to check yourself sometimes and be like, is this more about me trying to, show how smart I am, to say it in really rude terms or crude terms? Just think about that. Like, how do I get this point across in terms that somebody can understand? Um, I've spent so much time doing that. I think that that's actually, I'm not a physician, right? I'm not as smart as you guys. And I was that patient. So I've spent most of my career being in the middle somewhere and have had to figure out how to understand this and how to translate it. But we all should do better at that. So patients want to know about potential risks and alternatives to treatment recommendations per this study. And again, they also want to have more time understanding more about having more information. Now, there's other ways to communicate I want to mention real quickly. What is your office saying about you? It takes 7 seconds to lose trust and credibility. All that time that you might spend in a consultation and the patient might love you as the provider, everything you say, everything you talk about, really feel connected, and then it can totally be blown up in 7 seconds. And there's lots of reasons why. Decisions are made 50% on what you see, 25% on what you hear, and 25% on how you feel, right? There's that saying that says it's not what you say, it's how you make me feel. So what is your office saying about you? Think about that also. And it goes beyond the four walls of your practice, your website, your social media, the way that they answer the phone. It is also the people. That's why I say your people are really important. They are contagious one way or another. I've been into lots of offices. I had to throw these in here because people look at me like, no way. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been in all types of offices all over the country, if not in other countries too, although there's might be some exceptions to the way some of those poverty areas are. But these are practice where like if this is a patient's first impression, then what are they going to think about you as a practitioner? And it's not fair, but it's totally fair. We judge books by their covers. And when it comes to cash pay and it comes to alternative services, you can't risk fueling any more skepticism, any more fear, any more uncertainty in people by the way your office, including, how it looks, as well as your staff, how it looks, and so on and so forth. So I really encourage to think about that. What does your patient see, feel, and hear, and even smell when they walk in your office? So things can be really unorganized. I get it. You're busy. They can really be, just kind of low quality, low class, and really do things. And I don't mean you have to spend tons of money, but really think about that and do things. This one on the left, this is an office. This was actually one of my offices. This is the waiting room in one of my offices, which is interesting because nobody ever sat there. I never let anybody sit there. Because of all these things I've learned, because of all the things we're talking about, things were so organized and knew exactly what was going on. People never sat and waited. But then these others are places that I've either been to, or the one on the right is actually one that I started and worked in also. And it was phenomenal. It was fantastic. But that is the workstation for staff that the patients see. So it's not just maybe the front desk and things, but when it comes to IV therapy or it comes to, let's say, injection therapy and things, if there's any way patients are seeing the workstation where you're mixing things, all sorts of stuff, that's really important. I was just training an office today and she was commenting on how patients watch you like a hawk. I started an office, I started in an office, I started an IV room in an office where she was mixing all of our IVs in front of everybody. And the first thing I did was move out, not because I have something to hide, but because patients don't know what they're watching. Patients don't really, right? ER taught them what medicine is supposed to, the TV show ER. And so be conscious of this too, because it either builds trust or breaks trust. I would say your uniforms in your office, what you wear to your office. I've got all sorts of stories about that. Here's just some down the middle IV rooms. The one on the left is also one that I started. Very basic and yet very clean, very nice. The one in the middle is actually really great. Good friends in Miami where they had the really cool kind of posh IV room. And so they don't, but the one on the right, like it's standard, but it's clean, it's neat, it's organized. And your staff can be efficient and safe in that setting. And that's really a thing you need to look at too. So, I'm letting you know now we're going to run over an hour. I hope that's okay. If you have to go, you have to go. It's being recorded. But I also want to take some time on this and kind of do my best here. So, hang with us if you can. Again, we're going to make a lot of great offers, so to speak, classes and different things I want to tell you about in the end. So keep this in mind. I say this a lot. You're going to hear it from me again and again and again. It is your job to make your best recommendation. That is what the patient's paying for. Again, personal experiences here at MedMasters this morning. It's like we were talking about this. When I go into a consultation, I may not disagree with what your treatment plan is, what your diagnosis is, what your opinion is, but I am paying you to tell me what you would do, what you think is best. I can take it or leave it, but I want your best. And every patient goes into every consultation wanting that. Think about it. By the time they're in your office, something has pushed them to be there. Even if it's, I want to stay healthy. It's not convenient to be in your office. So something has driven them there. And when they're there, that's where that time is so coveted that you want to be able to give them your best recommendation. That's a treatment plan. That's not just diagnosis. It's not just here's what I think your labs say, here's the testing I think you can do, but what's the course of action? All those things combined. That is what they're paying you for, and you can charge whatever you want for it, but you need to take time to put together these treatment plans. In our situation of cash pay, I am assuming a lot of you do a lot with IVs, but it doesn't matter what other types of injections you're doing, aesthetics you're doing, hormone replacement therapy you're doing. You need to put together treatment plans, and not on the fly, not after the patient comes in for the consultation, but prior. And that's how you become really efficient. So I'm not going to take tons of time here because we're going to do this later on in the year and we have got workshops and stuff. But I did want to go through the fundamentals of a good treatment plan. Like I say, I do even private coaching on this. But you need to know your services, know what it costs you to provide those services, and know what your profit margins are. I was in the gym this morning thinking about all this and thinking about how I can help you and help clients. And I thought I would take on 100% for free any client, any of you who could provide these three numbers to me. And I say that because most people can't. If you know these three numbers, we've got tons to work with, and we can calculate exactly how much money you can make and exactly how we can put together treatment plans that get good outcomes. Like I really would. I would take you on as a client for free if you could provide these numbers right here. And if you could do the next 10 steps, I would absolutely take you on for free. But number 4, you need to incorporate all services as they fit. So it's not just IV packages or treatment plans. It's not just hormones. And this is what I coach on. It's like, what are all the services you provide? And let's figure out how they fit for a certain topic, a certain diagnosis, a certain health goal and health journey, right? Next one, schedule considerations built into the treatment plan, right? If you're going to put 10 of these and 5 of these and 3 of these, you got to also say we're going to complete this in an amount of time. And can you complete that in an amount of time? Number 6, create small, medium, and large a la carte options, right? So you got like, here's the basic plan that you can start with. Here's a better plan, and here's the best plan. And that is to be able to meet everybody's needs. And number 7, always include your follow-up visit in your treatment plan. It sucks to pay dollars for the treatment and then be charged again to talk to you about how that went, and give feedback and get feedback. So just include it in there. Pricing is data driven. It's not arbitrary. I see this all the time also. We're like, I don't know, we charge $250. Well, let's do 10 for 1,000. Like, where'd that come from? Like it needs to have spreadsheets. And again, when I do private coaching, and even I'm just going to give it away. We're doing classes in January and then workshops in February and March. And this is where I'm going to break all this down. I have your spreadsheets. I have put all this together for you. I know all the pricing of everything. You can plug and play, but you need to have that data in there so that you can say, this is what it costs me, you, and this is what it costs the patient. Here's what their savings is, and here's what my still net profit is. Right? You've got to know that stuff from a business standpoint. And if anybody asks, if anybody does the math, if anybody needs a refund, you got to have a system to it. Number 9, symptom diagnosis or goal-based plans, right? Here's our athletic program. Here's our neuropathy program. Here's our, immune program, right? Try to, well, number 1, we're trained that way, right? We get symptoms, we get diagnoses. It's the way that we relate with our health. And I'm not saying it's right, but it's the way that we've been trained through conventional medicine. Number 2 is it helps us like connect with it. And number 3, I'm guessing it's the way you've been trained too, to say, here's the symptom, here's the diagnosis, here's what I would do about it. And while that maybe used to be medications and surgeries and so on, we still can go down that road. So that's another little tidbit to put in treatment plans together. And the next one is create a brochure. Put it in writing, give them something they can hold, touch, feel, and take home and share, right? Most of what you say is forgotten. You've got to provide written resources. I didn't go into this, but something like this. One of my clients right now, super proud of them. They put together a binder on the pre-treatment It's got a lot of our stuff in it. We've got the handouts and so forth. But this is what they give all their new patients because the things that she says in her 20 minutes, people forget, and or they need to go home and share it with their spouse to justify the cost. They need to go home and share it with their family. They need to go home and share it with their neighbors so they can send people to you. So we put it in a treatment brochure. All right, next in that treatment brochure, and again, these are overviews, but pricing shows what they pay and what they save, and that's it. No slash pricing, no 10% off what they pay today for this and what they save. It's an all-inclusive cruise. It's how I like you to think about it. Like, think about an all-inclusive resort, right? You just know that you're going to get all of this. It comes with your food, it comes with your room, it comes with your entertainment, it comes with your stops, at your ports, and you pay $1,099. And all you have to do outside of that is your flights to get there and your alcohol. Think about like that. Create value so that the price is not the only thing that they're looking at. If you are one of those people that say people can't pay, then you're only giving them one thing to choose on, which is cost, which actually devalues it. And you'll never win that game. You'll never win that game. Somebody like a franchise is going to come in and make it cheaper than you. Somebody's going to come in down the road and do half the doses, a quarter of the doses. There'll be crappy practitioners, whatever. And somebody's going to always beat you at that game. That's why you want to become extraordinary. And that justifies your costs, right? You're putting everything you have into these people. And then the next one is discounts are greater the more they buy. So you've already built in a discount. You've already been, when they say, hey, if I pay cash, when they say, hey, if I did it all at once, like, yes, we've built that into it. All right, that's the overview of the treatment plan. Now, the last thing I really want to focus on is how to present and, yes, sell these treatment plans. This is part of your consultation, right? You have the credentials, you have the means, you have the education, you have the technique, right? If that's what it includes, doing these procedures, then you have to connect, you have to communicate, you have to educate them. You have to give them materials that educate them. And then you have to say, we have a plan for you. And we have options for those plans, but I'm going to make my best recommendation. If this was me, if this was my mom, if this was my brother, this is what I would do. With everything I know, with everything that I do here, this is what I would do. And then you can walk backwards from there. And that's where you start to bring in all of your services, right? How do they work together? How are they synergistic? In a best case scenario, this is what I would do. And yes, there's a cost associated with that, but this is the best I can offer you. Most people, especially when it comes to our healthcare, they do want the best. They do. Now, whether or not they can afford it, that's all up to them, by the way. That is all up to them. That is not up to you. Whether or not they can make the time, we'll go through in coming weeks and months on how to get through those objections, things to say towards those objections, and I'm going to get into it here too. So present the best case scenario first. And that is how you build your treatment plans. They are first based on treatment plan, and then they become packages with pricing. But if I had, or you had, Lyme disease, again, neuropathy, whatever it is, you build your treatment plan around the best treatments, and then we make it a package. So that comes first. Packages will increase communication, and we've learned why that's important. If people don't understand what they're getting, what they're buying, what the schedule looks like, what that means, then they're not going to buy it, or they're not going to finish it. They're not going to comply. It increases compliance. It increases engagement. Remember, the engaged patient actually spends more with you. If you can communicate and you can educate and you can connect and you can build trust and they see that your office makes a lot of sense, then they're going to be engaged. They're going to spend a lot more money with you. When they do all of those things, now their outcomes go way up, way up. If not, part of that might even be the placebo of, I love these guys. I love being here. I trust them. So I would never discount what their services do, right? And that's valuable. The mental game to this. That's why I say the doctor that gets sued is not the one that makes the mistakes. Sometimes, but not the majority of the time, or statistically, it's not what you think. It also increases value when they get all these things. They trust, they know, they like, they educate, and they get good outcomes. Now the value, your value to them is, nobody could take that away from them, or you. Like, you'd really have to screw up to take that away from them. And I have learned this over and over and over again. Even the people who don't get outcomes, when you can build all these other things, even if it's like, I gotta share this story. Have this guy, and well, so I'm in practice and I'm doing all of this. I'm doing the education, I'm doing the consults, I am educating, I'm, sharing the information, I'm introducing him to the doctors, I'm sharing the treatment plans, I'm asking for money. And so I got to see this trend where I was seeing over and over and over again these new patients coming to us from one guy who lives 6 hours away. So eventually I was like, and I was kind of new to the practice. This is my first practice. I'd been there maybe 6 months. And so I asked them, like, oh, yeah, there's this guy who used to come all the time, really nice guy or whatever. Well, I was like, I got to find out what this is about. So I called him. And I said, I just need to thank you. Like, we're getting tons of people from you. Like, can we help you? I mean, I looked in his chart and he hadn't been in for a long time. And I was like, is there something we can do? Can I send you some free supplements? Like, we really just thank you. And he's like, actually, I did come in for services and it didn't work for me. He got like prednisone injections or something. He's like, and it didn't help me. I had to have surgery or whatever it was. And I was like, wow. He's like, but I just feel like the medicine's valuable. I feel like it can help other people, even though it didn't help me. And I feel like you guys are great. And these people were coming from 6 hours away, like southern Utah, all the way up to Idaho, because he felt connected and felt like he trusted us and all these other things. And that referral, those warm referrals, those guys will always spend. They're not going to drive 6 hours to come not spend money. They already believe in what you do, and now you just have to be the part. So it does increase value, like never, like you just that will perpetuate the longevity of your business, which is really what you're going for. It decreases cancellations coincidentally, and it decreases sticker shock, meaning you think you're going to sit there and present like a $3,000 plan, but people now they see it. They're getting the whole thing, the whole picture. They understand it. They're getting the education. There's no like what I was experiencing where every time I went to the front desk, I was like, what's the damage? Is it going to be $200? Is it going to be $600? Is it like that's what's annoying? That's what's frustrating. That's what makes people not want to come back. When you sit with them after you've done all these things and you're like, here's my best option for you. I really think that this provides you the best potential. That's not sticker shock. Create schedule and revenue predictability. And not only that, but staffing predictability, inventory predictability. They're so magical. All right, so here's what I want to ask you. Do you have a process for this? So let's say you're having great consults, you got great staff, you're doing all the right things there, you get people into your consults, you're got good diagnostics, you're giving people good information. They're like, great, what do you got? And you got treatment plans, which I would I would say maybe 10% of the clients I speak to actually have treatment plans. They got treatments, but they don't have treatment plans. If they come up with a treatment plan, it happens on the fly, or they do all these consults, and now as providers, you got to go home and spend your evening time not only going through labs and not only, signing charts and all this other stuff, but you got to create treatment plans. And that's where a lot of people struggle, and you lose a lot of people, patients, because you said you would. If it takes 2 weeks, it takes 2 months. Remember, they're in their office because right now they want your help. And so the longer it takes to get that back with them, the more chance you have of losing them. So, do you have a process for selling your treatment plans? What does your patient flow look like? Where in your patient flow, right? There's so much to this, but it can start with social media, it can start with your website, it can start with a referral, but ultimately they come in your door. And once they come in your door, where in that process are you selling the treatment plan? Do you have time set aside to present these plans? If your consults don't create time to sell, then you're not going to sell anything. If you don't have a product to sell like a treatment plan, you're not going to sell anything. And remember, sales is getting them engaged in something that's going to help them and you believe it's going to help them. And it's going to create outcomes. If you don't get them in that treatment plan, you're not going to help them. And if you don't help them, you're not going to stay in business. So they all link together. So do you have time set aside in your day, in your schedule, in your new patient visits, your follow-up visits? In fact, I'd encourage you to all of these consultations are on the same day. So you can go boom, 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 and you stay in that mindset, not visit, consultation, injections, IVs, consult, report of findings. Like it does actually help to kind of keep this very scheduled. Who Who in your office is presenting treatment plans? And who processes the payment and schedules them? If you don't have just these elementary pieces of presenting and selling treatment plans and packages, then it won't happen. If you don't implement, you won't get outcomes. If you don't comply, you won't get outcomes, right? So you have to think about where in my process, my patient processes is going to go and who's going to do it. So what are the top patient objections? And man, I want to spend all year talking about this. I'm so excited about this, but we hear this all the time. Top ones, cost, like patient objections. You present a treatment plan or you present a treatment cost, like one IV is $400, or we got an EBU, it's $1,500. You present cost alone, number one, and you're going to lose 50% of the time because you created no value. No value. Like, what is it going to do for me? How is it going to work? Anyway, the top patient objections and how they voice that is it costs too much. I don't have enough time, or time's an issue. Why is it not conventional? Why is this different? And why is it not covered by insurance? Those are the top four. And if you can think of any more, if you have any more, put them in the chat. I would love to address these, especially in coming classes. Those are the top four we hear. Again, I've been in practice a really long time, so I know. But what they're really saying, the second half of the bulleted list here, this is what they're really saying. They're really saying when they say, or if they don't understand, if they like, what does this mean? If they don't understand, it's also known as, what is this going to do for me? That is literally the number one question they want to know, or they want answered. What you're providing for me, what is it going to do for me? Now, how do you answer that question? We'll talk about that. They're hesitant or they're skeptical. It's also known as, will this work for me? Have you seen this work for people like me? Some people might actually say that. Most people, they just look like, you think that they're shying away from the cost. That's what most of you think. That's why you think they can't afford it, but that's not why they're hesitant. They're actually hesitant because they're not quite sure what it's going to do for them, and they're not quite sure if it's going to work for them. You haven't actually, and I would say that this is such a common inhibition for a lot of practitioners because we're in this non-conventional place, and it's like it doesn't have the same support with studies sometimes, or with your medical associations, right? So you even wonder, is this going to work? How many IVs am I going to have to recommend? Is this EBU going to do anything for them? You guys often wonder that. So we got to get past that. But these are the things they're really saying when they're like, geez, that's a lot of money. Or I don't think I have the time to come in 3 times a week. That they're not actually saying that. They're also, what they're really saying is, how long will it take to notice a difference? And if you know their patient objections, you can answer them before they even ask. And that's where they think you're magic. Like when there's at the end of your consult, if there's nothing left for them to wonder, then they're probably going to buy. And I've been reading a ton of stuff by Alex Hormozy. I would really encourage it. But he says you need to make an offer that they would have to be stupid to turn down. And it's like, if you've answered all these questions, then what are they going to say? Right? And it doesn't mean that they have all the funds in the world. It doesn't mean they've got all the time in the world, but they will no longer be able to use those excuses, actually. And not that they're always excuses, but you know what I mean. So what they're really saying is, what can I expect? That might be, how long am I going to have to be here? How often am I going to have to be here? How am I going to feel after I have IVs? Am I going to be able to go after work after IVs? Like, those are all the things. If you haven't addressed those things, they may not purchase from you. What is this different? How is this different than what my other doctors have recommended? You might think if they're in your office, especially, well, as an referral, especially this may not be true, but you may think if they're in your office, they understand what you do and why you do it. And that's not the truth. That's not all the truth. They might simply, remember our avatar? They might just simply be looking for something else because everything else hasn't worked. And you need to help clarify that for them. So one thing they might be asking and not saying is, why isn't it covered by insurance? A lot of people will say that, but most of your offices or your office staff don't have great answers to that. And that always leads to skepticism, not always, but oftentimes, because we are trained to believe that if it's safe and effective and it's like valuable, then insurance covers it. And that's not even true in the conventional world. So we have to be able to address that in a very common sense way. How long will I need treatment? Another question. If they can't get that answered, then they're like, seems too expensive. This is an asterisk here. Prevention or maintenance are not often on a lot of people's radars, including yours. If you are in the treatment arena, right, you're seeing conditions, you are seeing diagnoses, then you're in the treatment phase of things. But if you're really believing in what you do, you really work at it, you put everything into it, then 85% of your patients should get better if they comply with your treatment plan. I don't know how long it's going to take. You don't either. You don't know exactly what that road's going to look like. I don't either. They don't either. But if we can keep them on that road until they do get to the point where they're feeling really good, now it is maintenance. Now it is preventing it from happening again. So there's always a next phase, but most people aren't aware of that. So a lot of people, these are their concerns. Now, I went back through this and I was like, so how do we answer this? And this is really small font, but cost. If you prove little to no value, if you prove little to no value, then the only information that they can compare on is cost. Time. Give them boundaries, but with a few options, right? That's how we combat that. We don't want to be conventional. Research goes beyond what's conventionally available anyway. Research is 20 years ahead of where conventional medicine is, and you got to find ways to say this. It's not covered by insurance. I've used this term a lot lately, but that I love. It puts the power back to the people, puts the power back to you, puts the power back to your staff, and puts the power back in your patient's hands. Maybe that's all it takes to let them know that insurance is not everything it's cracked up to be. So I did create some responses here. I'm not going to take the time to go through them here. We will get into these a little bit later just because of time. But you need to create an opportunity for your staff, for yourself to come up with these responses and to be able to believe in those responses, because you have to have these responses or else people are not going to engage in cash services, and or they just won't finish it out, right? They might do one phase of treatment, but then they'll come up with all sorts of excuses again, what may or may not be valuable to them. There's some ideas too. Use language like it's never a waste. That's what I love about this medicine. It's never a waste to give you some vitamin C. It's never a waste to um, give you some ozone. Your body knows exactly what to do with that stuff. It's the building blocks that your body's built on, right? It's the bricks your body's built on. And when they diminish, your body gets sick. When they stay in balance, your body stays well. And that is where it's never a waste, even if we can't predict what the body does with it. And I always like the term too, if all this did, and I'm going to use it on you here in a second, but if all this did was fill in the blank, got your energy up 30%. If all this did was got you off your medication, if all this did was get your pain down 50%, would it be worth it? Get them thinking about what's important to them. Because remember, health isn't everything, but without health, everything is nothing. And you kind of have to connect that emotion to the cost that you're presenting and the time and the commitment that you're presenting, and remind them that they are worth it, that they are worth it. That is emotionally and mentally probably the most powerful thing that you can do. And most people, most providers in conventional or I hate to keep doing that, but in their experience, many providers have not been able to say that to them. Also, you can use things like, this is what I feel is key to getting you back to, right? If you've asked them and you've heard from them, like, they'll tell you when I'm on the golf course or when I'm on the treadmill or when I'm playing with my grandkids, or it's just really, it's just like, it's really hindered how, pain has made me so tired. It's made me cranky. I'm fatigued. Like, they'll tell you what that is. So you can say things like, I feel like this treatment plan is key to getting you back on the golf course. I feel like this treatment plan will have a lot of potential to restore your lifestyle and the things that you would like to do, and kind of connect with them that way. The other thing, which is a typical sales thing, but most of us don't do it, and I think it's just human. So much of this is human psychology and the way that we all function, but ask permission. Like, are you ready to do this? Are you ready to make this change? Are you ready to change your life? Are you ready to, yes, it's going to take commitment, But if you're ready, I'm ready. And if you're presenting like good, better, best situations, then you can ask them, like, which of these? I'll tell you first, I think as a provider, you should present what you think is best. And that doesn't always mean the most expensive. It doesn't always mean the biggest. You know, not everybody needs that. But it is presenting what you think suits them the best. And then, though, you can say, there are other options. Which one do you feel suits you best? And they do get to choose, right? That is up to them what their commitment level is. So just be authentic. Remember to share stories. I say this a lot too. It's really weird that we want to feel like we're completely unique. Our situation is totally, individual. We're special. We're fragile, all these things. Or we're not. We're tough. A lot of people come in, we're tough, right? But we also want to know it worked for everybody else, right? That is literally what they're asking you. Is it going to work for me, but did it work for everybody else? Or can you guarantee, or I'm unique and I'm different, you're going to have to do it different, but did it work for everybody else? So you do need to share that. Share some outcomes, share some testimonials, and if nothing else, say yes. Yes, I have seen this work in people like you. So you're making no promises, right? This is one of the things our future workshops and things are going to do to help your staff is you need to stay safe with this, compliant, right? You do not want to be making claims. I have corrected this probably 6 or 7 times in this week where people have come to me and said, "How do I treat cancer?" Or could this be a good treatment for sepsis? I'm like, well, number one, don't ever say that, right? Like, stay away from that type of language. That's not the way that we handle the education part of this. But beyond that, you don't have to make promises. You just have to give them hope and the potential and let them know that they're worth it. So the last thing is, we talked about if you think they can't pay for it, if you think they won't commit for it, this is probably more in your head than it is in theirs. And not that they don't say some of these things, but again, consider what I've mentioned here that may not be actually what they're saying. But don't allow these self-limiting beliefs. We do this all the time. Our perception, man, I love the book. I couldn't remember the name of it. I was trying to tell Vicky the other day. But it's by Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about perception. He talks about almost placebo, right? Like that we all judge a book by its cover. It doesn't matter where we come from, what we think we do and we don't. And by the end, he's even saying that a jury in a courtroom could never be unbiased, but we all do it, right? You see the car they pull up in, they've asked you 3 times what it's going to cost, they seem irritated. All these things give us information that give us self-limiting beliefs. And if you don't have those, if you really try to disconnect from those and just say, I believe in this treatment, I believe in this medicine, I believe you can get better, I believe that we can help you, then and get your staff on that same page, then this whole process is going to be so much better. Because what's interesting, patients, there's a psychology, actually, I think it's a fundamental aspect of psychology that even somebody who is mentally slow, challenged, disabled can detect a liar. And you may not be lying, but if you don't believe in what you're selling, most people will be able to detect that one way or another. Your body language, that maybe it's what comes out of your mouth, maybe it's not. Maybe there's so many things, right, on how we perceive and how we communicate. So you need to believe in what you're doing too and what you're selling. So there's a post-sale component of this too. I'm just going to skip over that, but I want to ask you this question. Do you think you could improve in any of these areas? As I've talked through this and just hopefully giving you some things to think about, some insights, some research that says statistically, you're probably not as good as you think. Your office may have some room. But do you think you can improve in any of these areas like connecting and engaging, creating treatment plans? Could you get better at that lead to predictability and efficacy, right? Would you get better results if people did more of it, if you combine things? And number three, do you think you can improve in education and communication that builds trust? Even if it's what your office looks like, what your staff is dressed like, do you think that you can improve? So, do you think you could improve in these areas of your consults? Do you think if you improved that you could convert your conversion rate, right? Like in your consultations, conversion to treatment plans, like selling them, do you think you could increase it by 20%? It says 25, but I mean 20. 20%. I'm going to show you some numbers here. and just to get you thinking. And these are conservative numbers according to what I can do and the practices that I see at the top, and also what I know a lot of people are at the lower third, let's say. So these are averages. They may be high or low for you, but it's just some quick numbers. So let's say your average IV, and we're only talking IV, but there's all sorts of other packages you could do. Let's say your average IV package is $2,000 and you average 10 new patients or consultations per month. That could be consultations also, right? Because this is what we're talking about. You got people sitting in your office saying, I need your help. I want your help. What have you got to give me? I may have even already gone through some of your treatment plans, but I still want to know what you think and where I should go from here. Let's say you got 10 of those a month. Sorry, average new patients 10, average consults additional to that 20 more. So 30 total in a month. Again, that might be high or low for you. And where to get those, if you're not getting those, that's a whole nother conversation. But let's, again, for the sake of numbers, and you average a 20% conversion of those. So if you have this already, that's great. But let's say it increased because you improved some of the things we've talked about today. That would be a total revenue increase of $12,000 a month if you only converted 20% of them into treatment plans. And think again about what that result's going to look like and how that's going to be reciprocated back to your business long term. Again, $12,000 might seem like a ton to you. Maybe you're not doing that at all now. Maybe it's just a little bit, but regardless, it's an increase. And these are conservative numbers. You can do better. I know you can. We all can. We all can change. We all can tweak little things. All of your staff, if each one of them produced 20% more, what would that look like? So I'm going to ask you again, do you think if you improved in these areas, your consults would convert, your conversion rate would go up by 20%? And how does that make you feel? So I use this picture a lot. It's obviously a common thing. This might feel like you've been drinking from the fire hose because there's a lot to consider. There's a lot to do. I'll tell you in that first office I was in, now I could walk into any office and do it in like a heartbeat. And I do. I get paid to do that. I own several practices. I've sold several practices. I have personally sold millions of dollars in the exact thing that you're doing. I don't say that to brag. I say it to say that people don't have to have millions of dollars sitting around their bank account to purchase this medicine. People want this medicine. It's growing like never before. So it's totally doable. That's all I'm saying. Um, but in the beginning, it took months to make these changes, even probably close to a year. I mean, again, we went from 17 down to 4. Like this was a huge renovation. We even renovated our office so that the patient flow would circulate in the office so that it was very efficient, right? We wanted them to go from here to here to here. And in each one of those spaces was very intentional. We even renovated the office one spring break. But I gave you the numbers, 1.2 to 3.4. Huge, 40% decrease in overhead. With eventually we end up with 6 people running that place. So it can be done, but it might seem like a lot. However, we can help you. This is what I want to do over the next year for sure. And in fact, definitely in the next few months. So we first started with a couple of master classes in January 11th and January 25th. And it's going to be a continuation of this conversation, but really breaking this down. I'm just reading the comments. You guys are cute. I can give you my numbers right now, and I'm not kidding. This might be a good opportunity to work together. But this is another opportunity is we are going to have these day classes and they're 9 to 2 p.m. Eastern. So they're a day-long commitment. If you can't make one or the other, we'll record them. If you can't make either one, we'll record them and hopefully you would want to listen to them later. But first one, we're going to talk about treatment plans. All those like I don't know what they were, 15 different things I totally breezed over. We're going to break those down and we're going to go into each one of those. And then the second day, January 25th, we're going to work on the sales scripts, right? The objections. I've created so many materials to give you, and they're going to come with these classes. I want you to bring your staff to this. You guys know I'm not a practitioner. I am a product of attending classes and workshops. I've thought about this. I've done the math on this in the last month. I have attended over 120 medical and business classes, conferences, in 15 years. And that might be normal. I mean, this is what we do, right? Like it's not abnormal. But I'm not a provider. I'm not a practitioner. I'm not a nurse. I was fortunate to work with practitioners who invested in me, and I definitely gave it 1,000%. But to think about what your front desk person or your ancillary staff can do for you if you get them engaged, like think about how that translates to your patients. But I've attended so many conferences, and yet I can count on one hand probably the ones I remember, the ones that made such a huge difference on me, the ones that created these types of systems and created the language in me that was able to convert patients to treatment plans. And I'll tell you that that most of them weren't conferences, they were classes, they were workshops. They were like conferences you go and you hear a lecture, you hear some good information, it kind of inspires you, and then what? So I've thought about this and I'm like, this conversation, kind of like a presentation in a conference, might give you some ideas. It might give you some places to tweak. It might inspire you a little bit to go back to your practice and really renovate things, right? But like to truly onboard and implement this, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time and it takes your whole team. And that's why I wanted to build workshops and continue on with this, because that's the way I learned. The things that I actually took home, the things that I actually implemented were the things that I spent the most time learning, right? It wasn't just one-time lectures. I'm sure that we can collectively say yes. I'm sure you can too. But when you really do like a hands-on class, when you really do a training, that's why we focus on training, you really learn it better and you really take it to heart. So, anyway, we're doing those two classes. I've created a ton of materials here. This is what this goes through. So in these two master classes, you get the live and recorded, right? Training sessions. So we're going to go through interactive training, right? This will be interactive. You can definitely talk and hear and ask questions. Patient communication, cash pay conversations, tailored strategies for alternative health treatments. So both of those classes. Then we've got the lifetime access to it that you'll get. Then patient communication templates and scripts. I've developed these done for you scripts to address common objections and help patients feel confident about their care. And I would, if you do nothing else from this conversation, go back to your staff. Go back to your staff and ask them how confident they are with what you do. Ask them to tell you what it means to them. Meaning, how do you tell patients about ozone? How do you explain that? I had this experience with a franchise recently. I had this nurse, I said this the other day, but for those of you who weren't there, I had this nurse and she could have taught for me. Like she knew this procedure better than I did. She passed the exam, both the written and the hands-on. She was amazing. And there's two nurses, one that I had trained before, and then the kind of her mentor and then trainer, and then this one who was doing certification. They all finished. I was like, you did amazing. And I said, so how do you tell your patients about this? And they both sat there with a blank look on their face. They're like, well, we love it. I mean, it makes us feel great. Like that was it. That was it. Even though they'd been through the didactics, they'd been through all the information we provide on ozone and UV, it just didn't sink in a way that they could regurgitate it so that somebody understood and so that somebody believed them. It is amazing. So competency is not enough. So I've created these scripts and I want your staff to come and I want to be able to, give them resources that they can actually work at and implement and change behavior. You don't change behavior just by being inspired with a presentation or a book. So the YES framework, a step-by-step guide for seamlessly implementing these techniques in your practice. I've created that. You get that with classes. And then when you register for these two classes, it's one price for both classes. We're gonna have Q&A sessions. So 4 in February and 4 in March, just weekly Thursdays at 7 p.m. It's for the whole group. It's for everybody who registers and your staff. You can bring them. And that's where we're really dive into. I want to do some role playing. I want to get your staff telling me what they hear in their practices and be able to give some suggestions there. So it's personalized advice. And again, I know you may not be able to make it every Thursday and your whole staff every Thursday at 7 p.m., but we'll record those too and you can have access to those. And then we're doing a bonus too of a team empowerment toolkit. These are the resources I give to all of my consulting clients to help you define your goals, to help you define where you are, kind of that stuff I said in the beginning, like not necessarily like your cost, but I want to know, your strength, your SWOT analysis. I want to know like what's your average production so that we can see what 20% increase looks like. And you have to actually put that stuff in writing. You have to do the work and then you can make change with that. So I'm giving you that stuff that I normally only do with my private consulting clients. So altogether, like this is super valuable, probably 5,000 plus. And I charge at least $4,000 a month for private coaching. So you get all of this in those two classes, but we're charging the 487 for both classes. You only get both classes if you can make it or not make it again. The recordings are there. So 487 per clinic, one ticket for your whole staff. But we are limiting it to 30 clinics because we want to have a good experience and or we're closing the registration January 3rd, whichever happens first. So you guys are getting the first notice of this unless you were members, you got notice of it yesterday. So if you're a member of MedMasters, you pay monthly for a membership, you get all this for free. But you still need to register to reserve your spot. If you're not a member, you don't have to become a member, although that would save you a lot of money. Um, you get all these things for the 487. Vicky put in the chat right now that you can go right now and you can register because tomorrow morning we're going to send this out to our entire group. And when it fills, it fills. Because again, I can only handle so many people at once and so many questions and so many classes. I think we'll do it again, but now's the best time, right? Let's renovate your office. Let's improve this by at least 20%. And I am guaranteeing to you that if you attend and you fill this class, does not transform how your team approaches cash pay conversations, I'll refund your investment. I'll give you the 487 back. You got to attend everything though. You got to be there. I mean, you got to at least watch the recordings. You got to be there in January. You got to be there for the workshops in February and March. If you do that and you are not seeing results, you're not satisfied, I will refund your money. So, don't allow these self-limiting beliefs. Don't, it's not true that your patients won't pay. It's not true if that your staff isn't capable or isn't able to have these conversations. It's just not true. And remember, if you think that, it becomes what you are. So you have to change the way you think about this. You have to change the way you think about treatment plans. You have to change the way you think about your consultations. You have to change the way you think about your practice in order to actually change behavior. And that's why I love this, right? What you think becomes your words. When you say that, you start to believe it. That becomes your actions, then your habits, then your character, and ultimately your behavior. So change the way you think, come to our classes, learn more about this, bring your staff. I am a product of as a staff member, going to all these different things, implementing it, right? Being able to implement this and see that change and then see people's lives change and then see your practice financially succeed. So you've got the link is there if you want to do this with us this coming January, which is only like what, like 3 or 4 weeks away now, it's crazy. And then also workshops that come with it where we can interact a lot better. We're also going to have some giveaways. We've got some vendors who are going to be giving away some items at these things. It's really, I'll say this too, like you just think about what does it cost to invest in your staff? Like what kind of a return on investment can you get? So for the 487, again, if all you did was sell six $2,000 packages a month, it would pay over, what is 12,000 divided by 5? Like you would get 60 times your investment. And that's why I'm like, I guarantee it. If you're not happy, we'll definitely refund your money. So for anybody still hanging on, I want to look at your questions and see if there's anything here, any comments. Aaron, I can give you my Excel sheet right now. I just so appreciate you guys being able to do that. Like seriously, that's good business. You got to know your numbers, and then we can take it so much further from that. So Erin, Mindy, we always keep track of these. So we'll reach out to you and actually maybe have a consultation time with you, see if this is something you want to do on a private basis. It's more work. It is more intense than some of these other things will be. But I always guarantee that too. In 4 weeks, you will have treatment plans. I guarantee it. And usually I charge a lot for that. But yeah, let's see if we can't work together. Yep, staff can also come with the price. Again, we're not limiting how many staff. That could be your other doctors, it could be your front desk, it could be whoever. It saves you so much time if you just have them come listen all at once. It puts them all on the same page. I know that you may have to pay them to be there. That's one of the things, but think again about what that might cost you. And if it were to make you $12,000 a month times 12 months, and that's again, I could do that in a day. So the potential is there for sure. I know it might cost you to either take time off work to have them come to these workshops or to pay them to be at these workshops. But it'll be worth every penny because it's going to cost you either way. It totally is going to cost you either way. You either spend on the investment and get the return on that investment. The compliance equals efficacy, right? Or you're going to pay for it without that. So, yes, and we're not limiting that, but 30 clinics or January 3rd is the last date for registration. Um, yeah, good question on the memberships. It's 45 a month. And you get so much more than this, but it's always been that you get classes at either a discount or for free. So it's one of the perks. And we're gonna plan to have a lot more classes this year, but you also get all of our training materials. You get access to all of our vaults, which is, we've got education on IV therapy, a lot of ozone and UV. That's what our kind of foundation is. Methylene blue, glutathione, PMF, ozonated saline. And it's all we can go through that with you also. But you get monthly access to that, and there is no cancellation fee, or you can cancel at any time. However, to get all this stuff for free, like you got to be a member the whole time. You can't buy the membership today and then get 3 months worth of materials canceling tomorrow. So, yeah, okay. Vicky's keeping track of this. Holly's on with me too. Lindsay's on with me too. That's our team, and we'll be in touch with you. Give me a little bit of time because we're having it's just an interesting week. We're all kind of in different places this week, but be patient with us and we'll get back to you. Again, go to that link right now. You can purchase right now. Share it with anybody, any of your practitioner friends, they can be anywhere in the world, right? To come and learn this stuff. In fact, one of my good friends, we went through this for her in El Salvador. And if you think that your patients can't pay for services or they don't have the money, you should try doing this in El Salvador. But she implemented most of these things and was amazed at how many people absolutely would. And now, because she's been able to show efficacy and also desire or demand for it, they have their insurance system over there has actually accepted some things. So, really cool things come from treatment plans and efficacy because then we can actually track that. And maybe someday we could actually put together some numbers that prove that what we do has efficacy in different areas. So, all right, you guys, thank you so much. Again, be in touch with us if you have any questions. We'll get back to you with any of the things that you've put in here. And you'll be getting this email tomorrow or the next day with the recording as well as links to purchase there. But by then, it's opened up to thousands of people. So get your spot now. All right, you guys, enjoy your evening and your Christmas holiday season. We'll be talking with you soon.